But I would like to welcome each one of you here. Thank you for coming. I'm going to ask now if y'all will stand and join Commissioner Deal. He will lead us in the invocation and blessing.
You'll pray with me. Dear Lord, we just thank you for the blessings of this day. Thank you for this beautiful morning you've already blessed us with. Lord, I pray that you will continue to be with each of us, keep us well and safe, and I continue to pray for those that are out there across our country, Lord, fighting the virus, and Lord, be with those companies that are diligently working on a vaccine, and I pray for our workers on the front line, that continue to bless them and keep them safe. Lord, thank you for each member here. Thank you for the time, and I pray that you'll bless this meeting and continue to bless each and every one of us. In your name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Commissioner Hill, now we'll ask County Clerk James to call the roll, please.
I, James, President of Corporate Board of Commissioners of Bullock County, hereby call the roll for those on the governing body. All those present may answer by saying aye. Chairman Roy Thompson.
Aye.
Vice Chairman Anthony Simmons.
Aye.
Commissioner Ray Mosley.
Aye.
Commissioner Jackie Stringer.
Aye.
Commissioner Kurt Deal.
Aye.
Commissioner Timmy Rushing.
Aye.
Commissioner Walter Gibson.
Aye.
I have determined that we have all members of the Board of Commissioners present. Therefore, we have a quorum to conduct business for the good of the citizens of Bullock County. I now yield the floor to the chairman.
Thank you, Ms. Gaines. I will now, before I entertain a motion to approve the general agenda, do we have any other discussion or modifications desired by the county manager or commissioners?
Will the chairman yield the floor to the county manager, please?
Yes, sir.
Thank you and good morning. We're only requesting one modification to the agenda this morning on the advice of the county attorney, and we're asking to add an executive session before official adjournment of the meeting to discuss litigation matters.
Okay, we will be adding
Mr. Chairman, if there's no further amendments or additions, I move we approve the general agenda.
we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any more discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, show of hands. Unanimous approval. This morning, we're going to have about 3 presentations, and first, we're going to listen to Mr. Marcus Toole with Habitat for Humanity.
Greetings, commissioners and Bullock County. I'm Marcus Toole with Habitat for Humanity of Bullock County. Our affiliate is the affiliate for all of Bullock County. As far as I know, the house that we're building out in the Hope-Delica area is the 4th one out in rural Bullock County. We have lots for 3 additional houses in Portal. We're just waiting to find a family in the Portal area who qualifies. And we would love to have lots in the Brooklet area. It's just a matter of getting one. Today, I want to discuss Habitat for Humanity's cost of housing or a cost of home program, which is our advocacy effort. As it relates to the county, our current focus is on what we believe is the county's need for a planning department, to add a planning department to your county. Before I do that, though, I want to give you just a little bit of history about cost of home and advocacy at Habitat for Humanity. In 2014, that's the year that I actually joined Habitat, Habitat International did a 5-year planning program where they came to the realization that the loss of affordable housing for low-income people, or the attrition rate of it, has accelerated Habitat's ability to build houses. In other words, the United States in general is losing ground, and it is absolutely impossible for any nonprofit organization to keep up with it working alone. With that, what Habitat decided is that they will leverage their brand, the Habitat brand, which is the third largest brand name, most recognized brand name in the world in terms of nonprofit organizations, and I think it's like number 7, and even when you count big for-profit corporations, to use that brand name to leverage government entities and private corporations, other private organizations, industry, in a broader effort to improve the overall housing situation for low-income people. And that meant that Habitat would then engage in advocacy. Habitat began our first steps in doing this in 2014 when we joined the Blue Mile Project. We started advocating, working with the Blue Mile partnership to get them to work on including the neighborhoods adjacent to the Blue Mile in their overall revitalization strategy, with the argument that you can't revitalize the business district if the housing adjacent to the business district is scaring all your customers away. And so we changed the focus to include the neighborhoods adjacent to the Blue Mile. Then the creek on the Blue Mile became an issue, which we support, but we had the concern that the lake that would be built for the creek would cause an issue with the neighborhoods right around that Blue Mile, particularly around Michael Street and Institute Street. And so what we then began saying, okay, Statesboro, you need to start planning to replace that housing with affordable housing somewhere else, in particular single unit affordable housing. That kind of put a fire under the city, and their response was for the city of Statesboro to enter in the GIC, Georgia Initiative Community Housing Program, and which we are very active with. About a year and a half ago, I began attending county commission meetings and trying to get my mind around the county is how can we leverage the county to improve the housing situation for Bullitt County in general, and what are the housing needs, the primary housing needs, when it comes to the county level. One of the things that I realized years ago is that Bullitt County has a chicken and egg issue in relationship to its efforts to attract industry to our I-16 corridor. You have a CAD district there. You have property there that you can put industry on, but a challenge you have with that part of the county is that there's no workforce housing. There's very little affordable housing that's in a short driving distance, and even less so in walking distance to that CAD area. And so in order to attract the industry, you got to attract the housing. But that's a chicken and the egg problem. You know, how do you get people to invest in putting housing there when you don't have the industry there to attract the workers? And yet, how do you attract the industry there when you don't have the housing there for the workers to work in? I happen to know, actually, it was late State Senator Hill, Jack Hill, who told me and Kathy that in a couple of years, this was last February, so we're now a year into that couple of years. A couple of years from now, or a couple of years from then, the state of Georgia is going to be investing in workforce housing. And immediately I started, talking to Tom Couch, talking to some of you individually. Bullitt County needs to position itself so that it can acquire grant money to draw that workforce housing here for your industrial park. That was before COVID hit. Well, one of the things that became very apparent as I began discussing this and talking with Tom Couch about it is that one of the big challenges to doing anything in relation to planning for housing is the fact that your county manager and your assistant county manager are the only two people in Bullitt County who have that planning role. You don't have a planning department. You don't, it's hard to, this is a big planning issue, and it's a planning issue that involves housing, it involves infrastructure, it involves highways and roads, it involves multiple departments in the county, and you really, to put yourself in a place where you can acquire that money, the thing you most need is a group of people who have it as their job description to do the planning for it, to do the preparation for it. After that, those early conversations with Tom, I've been sitting here and I have noticed that the county commission spends an enormous amount of time addressing complaints about issues, roadway issues, even sewer issues. The folks from the people who empty septic tanks came here and said, all the places that receive waste from Bullitt County are at capacity, and if Bullitt County continues to grow, we have a problem. All these issues relate to planning. All these issues that you spend time addressing now, that take up your time and your energy, are things that you had people addressing it 10 years ago. And some of it's stuff that you can't fix now. Some of the roadway issues, because they're private roadways and developments that happened 20 years ago, you don't have jurisdiction to touch it. Those issues should have been addressed 20 years ago, and a planning department would have helped you do that. Bullitt County is a way bigger government entity than the city of Statesboro. You have more moving parts. You have more independent power centers because you have more elected officials as department heads. You desperately need a department that helps you to have a master plan and to keep everyone on board with that master plan and to tell you what's coming so that you can plan for it. And then when you have an opportunity and you get a heads up from the state senator saying, there's state money to address your housing issue, near your industrial park that's 2 years out, and yet you don't really have anyone that you can give that to who can run with that ball because you don't have a planning department. And what you desperately need to take advantage of these monies is a planning department. Now, I know that a planning department costs money. It's one or two additional salaries. I get that. But you know what? A planning department will save you money. And it will help you get more money because you have people who can write grants, who can put you in better standing to achieving grants, receiving them, getting them, and you have people who can tell you that something that's going to be expensive is coming down the road, and you need to plan for it, and maybe you can even head it off at the pass before it gets here. The other challenge with the planning department is that It's not sexy, and I realize that. It's not nearly as sexy as paving a road. You know, county citizens probably don't feel the benefit of the county planning department until some of you are no longer in office. But if you put in a planning department, the people who are sitting in your seats, the men and women who will be sitting in your seats 20 years from now, will be very thankful that you did. If the planning department is effective, they won't be spending time talking about some of the things that you have to spend time talking about, because the problems would have been addressed long before it became a crisis for the Bullitt County Commission to address. And so I really, I know Tom said that y'all had conversations about the planning department. Habitat, we plan to have your back with that. If this is something the planning commission, county commission wants to do, we're going to start advocating for it publicly. But we really think that you know, we would love to see the county put itself in a position to do some exciting things about housing, and other things. And you know, housing is not just about building houses. It's also about infrastructure. It's about having the housing close enough to the place where people are going to make a living, so that they're not having to drive 30 miles to get to where they're going to work. Appropriate housing issues also relate to all the other things, you know, fire, police. All these things are connected with housing. So it's one cog in a big picture. But to do all that, you really need a planning department to even begin to address some of the other issues that you have. I think that is the one thing, as I look and say, there's one thing that can not only improve housing but improve a lot of other things, it is having a planning department. If you have any questions about Habitat, Kathy Jenkins here is our executive director. Either of us would love to field any questions you might have.
Anyone have any commissioners have any questions?
Mr. Chairman, may I make a couple comments?
Yes, sir.
Well, first, as a disclaimer, I didn't tee Mr. Toole up to bring this argument, but he is aware, and I know he's spoken with some of you, that you know, we're trying to mobilize resources to go in this direction. I mean, I will say, down at I-16, Mr. Toole's right. There is a chicken and egg effect with this, but I happen to think if we can get a chicken in the form of industry, it'll lay the egg for workforce housing. Because some of you who've been here long enough might remember when we did our redevelopment plan down there, it was typically broader than the statutory requirement for those kinds of plans. We did a land use plan and an infrastructure plan, and we do have a broad vision for workforce housing down there in the long-term future, although we don't know exactly where it'll go. It'll probably depend on supply and demand in the marketplace, but we estimated in that plan that in the long run, as the area builds out, that there could be as many as 1,400 housing units there, which I think is a reasonable projection. But with regard to planning, we have issues. I think Mr. Toole addressed a lot of what I call advanced planning issues, which I believe we probably do need some dedicated staff in the future to deal with. But also what I call the current planning issues with, you know, a lot of the zoning decisions and the like that both you and the Planning and Zoning Commission have to make. But then as we try to mobilize resources, some of you know we're also running into space issues. It would be one thing to hire any additional staff or build a staff, but we're not exactly sure where we would put them right now, physically. But I think Mr. Thompson in particular, we've had more in-depth discussions maybe than I've had with some of the other commissioners but I don't think I'm telling you anything that you don't already recognize. And I think any kind of housing strategy we have is going to be a little bit different than the city's, well, maybe a lot more different than the Statesboro's approach. But if we were going to target workforce housing, the tax allocation district would be the most likely area where we have to look at it harder. And I do feel good that we have good capacity in as far as grant acquisition is concerned, whether it's pre-award or post-award. We can get grants and we can manage them. I'm confident about that ability. But planning is a very directed activity, and I think Mr. Welch will admit as well as I do, even though we have the so-called expertise to deal with it, right now our job is management, and we're trying to take care of everything that affects the county government. So I think we do have to mobilize resources to get some dedicated planning staff. We may have to build into it, but I think we'll continue to have that discussion in the next couple of months. But even though I express the way I feel, I did not set this guy up to come here and make our pitch. He did it on his own volition.
And I was already thinking planning was one of the things we were going to discuss before I even talked to Tom Couch.
Any commissioners have any comments?
Mr. Tube, I'm just curious about this. I see a lot of habitat houses built in the city. Do you build any out in the county? If you said that, I missed it again.
We have built 3 in the county that I know of, and we're currently building one in the Hosty Market area.
Thank you.
And we have properties in Portal, but we don't have families for those properties yet.
Okay, thank you.
And I might add that Tom and myself have talked several times about a county planner, but we've also talked several times about 30 extra deputies in crime, in dirt roads and pavement and things. So, it's trying to work it all out without a tax increase, particularly at this point in time with the COVID and everything else that's going right up the way it is. But I know in the future, whatever the future means or holds, I know that will happen. And I think that, and we do have some very, very excellent grant writers that's working for the county now. We don't have the city planner other than with Mr. Couch and Mr. Welch there, and county planners, and but it will come, and we certainly appreciate your coming today. Thank you very much. We're now going to have a recognition presentation with our finance department, and we're going to ask Mr. Welch to make this presentation.
Thank you. And this is something that I mentioned a month ago during staff comments, but we wanted to formalize this, and we have the certificate now. The Government Finance Officers Association has awarded the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting to Bullitt County for its comprehensive annual financial report, or also called a CAFR, for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2019. COVID delayed this a good bit. We would have received this a while ago, but we're in the process actually of preparing the one for this next year. But the CAFR has been judged by an impartial panel to meet the high standards of the program, which includes demonstrating a constructive spirit of full disclosure to clearly communicate its financial story and motivate potential users and user groups to read the CAFR. That comes from the award. And the Certificate of Achievement is the highest form of recognition in the area of governmental, accounting, and financial reporting, and its attainment represents a significant accomplishment for Bullitt County. I think, as I mentioned before as well, Bullitt County is one of 39 counties in Georgia receiving this award, and only one of 19 receiving this award and the Distinguished Budget Award. Now, most of the counties that receive these are all bigger than us. 15 of the 19 are larger. It includes Bolton and Gwinnett, Cobb, and DeKalb, and some others. But we would like to thank the Finance Department for their hard work and diligence in helping us receive this award and being recognized by their professional association for meeting all the requirements. And so we would like to have a picture and a presentation of the award for this first time. And we'd especially like to thank Christy King and Whitney Richland, who's no longer with us, for helping Bullitt County receive this award. If we could take a picture. That'd be okay?
Yes, sir. And if we will, let's do it the way we normally do it. I'll step down there with certificate. We'll have Andy and Christy, if you'll come forward, and then if y'all are gather over this way, try and keep as much distance as you can in the picture. Coming back. Now, how would you like to write? Why don't we do it, well, to the both of you, because you read it. This is the official certificate, and this, I've always said, we've got the greatest employees anywhere working for the county, so. Thank you very much. And we can probably afford it. Go back somewhere. I think a lot of y'all have been where I'm at this morning, in a position that you need to right a wrong. You know what I'm talking about? Where you make a mistake sometimes. Not long ago, we had two groups in here, and I gave each person, or each one, 4 minutes each to speak. And I think we had 6 in one group and 1 in the other group. So I want to equalize that time this morning. The vote has been taken. Nothing is going to change other than letting Dr. Alvin Jackson come up. He said it would probably take less than 20 minutes, and not even going to put the clock on. I won't put the clock on you, but when you started, it'll be about 9 o'clock. About 9 o'clock. But I want you to have the opportunity to finish. I cut him off at 4 minutes, so I want to give you the opportunity to finish what you were going to say that night.
Thank you, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and to the commissioners. I am Dr. Alvin G. Jackson, a Bullitt County native. Attended the Willow Hill School 1 year at William James, and was in that first group in 1965 under the freedom of choice to integrate the schools here in Bullitt County, going to the Statesboro High School. That was in 65, and I graduated in 68. My family ancestry here in Bullitt County dates to the 1700s, and many of my ancestries served during the era of slavery. As was stated a few months ago, I came before this commission to talk about a contextual marker to be placed on the grounds of the Bullitt County Courthouse to explain the Confederate statue there. Unfortunately, we were not successful in our efforts. So today I want to talk a little bit more about that. But before I make my presentation, I want to thank the commissioners, and especially Mr. Ray Mosley and Mr. Simmons, for their support through a letter, and also the school board through Mr. Wilson, who provided letters for us, and we received a grant for $109,000 for the Institute of Museum and Library Sciences to establish a Wi-Fi service on the grounds of the Willow Hill Heritage and Renaissance Center at the old Willow Hill School to provide digital access for those who may not have Wi-Fi. And we will begin in January building a shelter outside in spite of COVID to allow individuals who do not have, we have plates that we would check out to students and also provide an environment for them. And this should help those students who may not be in school and those who may be working from a virtual perspective. And so we want to thank the commissioners for that as well. So let me just start by walking a little bit down American history. As you all know, in 1619, and this would be 401 years ago, a boatload of 20 Africans came to Port Comfort in Virginia, near Jamestown, and they were exchanged for food. And so this is sort of the origin of slavery in these United States. Those of you who are students of history know that in the 1500s in St. Augustine and out west, African Americans came here, Africans came in with the Spaniards. So it wasn't the first time that Africans would have come to America. Now there are several important dates I want to mention in addition to the 1619. In 1776, we know about the Declaration of Independence, and prior to that, there was a war, and one of the first people to die in that war was a person of color. In 1789, when we had the Constitution of the United States, African Americans were not recognized in the Constitution. In fact, they were listed as 3/5 of a person. And another important date that I think is worthy of notice is in 1857, when we had the Dred Scott decision, a United States Supreme Court decision which did not represent people of color, African or African Americans. They were listed as property, and therefore they had no rights to make any presentation before the courts. This was a fellow named Dred Scott who was a slave and who had gone to a free state and asked that he be considered a free person, and this was denied. This was just a few years before the start of the Civil War. Now, I'm mentioning these points because the whole time in America, we've had challenges of what we call white supremacy and the inferiority of other races. So when I came before you, first we talked about contextualizing a marker to be put at the courthouse. After some reflection, I'm of the opinion that it's actually time to remove that Confederate statue on the grounds of the Bullitt County Courthouse, where it has stood for 111 years. While it may be a symbol of heritage to many, it is also a symbol of white supremacy, pain, and suffering to others. Beginning in February of 1861, 11 southern slaveholding states, including Georgia, seceded and formed the Confederate States of America in rebellion to the United States constitutional government with Jefferson Davis as president. these states made no secret of their ultimate aim: to preserve the institution of slavery and maintain white supremacy. Alexander Stevenson from Georgia, Vice President of the Confederacy, spoke in Savannah, Georgia on March 21st, 1861, on the ideology of the Confederate States of America. In what is called the Cornerstone Speech, he articulated his beliefs in white supremacy and contrasted that with the United States Constitution, which is based upon the assumption of the equality of the races. In the Constitution of the Confederacy, I quote, "Our new government is founded upon exactly the opposite idea. Its foundations are laid, its cornerstone rests upon the great truth that the Negro is not equal to the white man, that slavery, subordination to the superior race, is his natural and normal condition. This is our new government. It is the first in the history of the world based upon this great physical, philosophical, and moral truth." Now, I think that's important for us to conceptualize that and really understand the meaning of that. A few weeks after this speech, on April 12, 1861, Confederate forces fired on Fort Sumter in Charleston Harbor, initiating the American Civil War. After a long, hard-fought war with over 700,000 deaths, the war ended on April 9, 1865. The Confederacy collapsed, slavery was abolished, and 4 million enslaved blacks were freed. Former Confederates would sign the ironclad oath, which would allow them to re-enter and swear allegiance to the United States government. During the Reconstruction era, from 1865 to 1876, of about 12 years, newly enfranchised blacks became involved in the government of the South, winning elections to both state and U.S. legislation. However, white supremacy remained entrenched, which in the next century would expose African Americans to terrorism, racial subordination, and disenfranchisement. Racial violence, massacres aimed at the formation of the Ku Klux Klan. White supremacy was very widespread in the former Confederate States. Then in 1896, there was another major United States Supreme Court decision called the Plessy versus Ferguson decision, which established the separate but equal doctrine. And again, we saw the rise of Jim Crow and entrenched segregation in the United States. Now, on September the 10th, 1894, 29 years after the end of the Civil War, the United Daughters of the Confederacy was founded in Nashville, Tennessee. 13 years later, in 1907, a chapter of the United Daughters of the Confederacy was organized in Bullock County. The express purpose of the organization included the commemoration of Confederate State Army soldiers and the funding of the erection of memorials. Its promotion of the Lost Cause movement which has been interpreted as advocacy for white supremacy, and most recently, many of the KKKs, remember that was founded in Pulaski, Tennessee, Nathan Forrest, he was also honored with a statue. On Friday, April the 30th, 1909, on the grounds of the Bullock County Courthouse, the United Daughters of the Confederacy erected a monument to commemorate the Confederate dead. This was erected 5 years after the infamous trial of Reed and Cato at the same courthouse where they later, very near the courthouse, were burned alive. At the unveiling ceremony, a great crowd was present. Businesses and schools were closed, and there was great celebration with marching band and speeches. During and after the time, the Daughters of the Confederacy determined to venerate and vindicate the Confederate and antebellum roots and craft the lost cause mythology, which suggested that states' rights, not slavery, caused the Civil War, and the right of secession was deeply embedded in American constitutional history. This lost cause idolized doctrine, which constituted paternalism about African American slavery and glorified the values of the Confederate soldiers. Professor Karen Cox, who published this book, she is a professor at the University of North Carolina and has well researched the Confederacy and the Daughters of the Confederacy. She argues that elite Southern women, not men, led the way in constructing the lost cause, images in commemorating and preserving the idea of the South. These women played a very prominent role in Southern public life, changing the region's conservative social and racial value and celebrating the roles of the Confederacy during the Civil War. They raised money for statues. The Daughters memorialized dead soldiers and fought to preserve the legacy of slavery. They rewrote history by transforming the Confederate from traitors into patriots. They erected monuments like the one on the square at the Bullock County Courthouse. They distributed Confederate flags and library books to public schools for white children, as explained in Professor Cox's books. So there was a concerted effort on the part to venerate the lost cause. And that statue is a symbol of segregation and white supremacy. As we look across America, change is in the air. We know that many counties and many states are now reconsidering the role that these Confederate statues have. I believe that in a public square, that is not the most appropriate place for this Confederate statue. Many of them are putting them in museums, in other parks, but a public place like the Bullock County Courthouse should not, in my opinion, be the place for these Confederate statues to remain. As we look and review what happened during the 50s and 60s with the 54 Brown versus Board of Education decision, which overturned the Plessy decision and created more opportunity in the South with the Civil Rights Act of 64 and the Voting Rights Act of 65. You commissioners have the authority and the power to create this change where all of us feel like when it comes to our public spaces that we are a part of this creation of a more perfect union. I know that the vote has already happened, but there will be opportunities in the future for you to reconsider. Please know that that statue represents the era of white supremacy, and by removing that, you will help to make America and Georgia and Bullock County a more perfect union. Thank you very much.
Dr. Jackson, I certainly want to thank you for coming this morning, and I'm sure that we will see you in the future.
That is correct. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you all very much for this opportunity for me to make this presentation, and I'm hopeful that we will try to in the future remove these symbols that that taint our past as we go to the future.
Yes, sir. Would you mind if I mention something this morning? I guess it's okay.
Please.
This would be about your wife. I would like to ask the commissioners, everyone here, to keep his wife in mind. He's supposed to have come a couple, 2 or 3 months ago, and it's been an inopportune time. His wife had a kidney transplant, and I think she had a rough road, according to what you had told me a few minutes ago. And I just ask that you add her to your prayer list. And I'm not going to even look at Jeff to see if it's okay if I said that, but I would like to ask them personally to add her to your prayer list.
And I do appreciate that, because sometimes we don't always appreciate the role of our organs, our eyes, our lungs, and when it comes a time when we no longer have them and our lives depend on that. And my wife was a dialysis patient for 5 years, and I did her dialysis at home. I went and got trained, and she was on hemodialysis, and we did it 5 hours for 5 days a week, and that really involved a true commitment. So after working in the office, I came in and did that for her. And one thing that always touched me was every night when I finished doing her dialysis, she looked at me and said, "Thank you. Thank you." Because she didn't like leaving the home. And then it came one night, we got it in Charleston, they called us, we had to go right away, found the kidney, and it was 11 o'clock at night. She stayed until about 2. And then the first 2 weeks was very, very rough. She had to stay extra in the hospital. The kidney finally kicked in. And then later on, I just took her out of the hospital again 2 weeks ago because she had to be on immunosuppressants, and those got toxic in her system. And so that has all been corrected. She's doing well, but prayers are almost welcome. Thank y'all so much, and thank you for bringing that up. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're going to move into the next portion of our meeting is public comments. And does anyone in the audience have any comment that they would like to make? If so, step to the podium.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I did not know Dr. Jackson was on the agenda. I didn't sign up to say anything. I appreciate all of you hearing what he had to say, and I agree a new day is coming, and it's soon. Hopefully, Bullock County will join the many across the country who have realized that those kinds of monuments tell people of color that they are not equal, and that taking them down will be a signal that we appreciate all of the people in our county and that we can all work together. May it be so. And thank you for hearing what he had to say.
Yes,
And for
ma'am.
hearing me.
Thank you very much. Okay.
I too didn't realize that Dr. Jackson would be talking, but I give a 100% second to what he said. I agree. I think it's time for those statues to go away. I realize that they mean a lot to people, but they don't have to be in the most prominent corner of, in the entire county, it can be someone else. Thanks.
Yes, sir, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, seeing no one else we are hearing, we will now move into our consent agenda. We did have a Miss Cindy Smith signed up to speak, but she had to cancel out. So on our consent agenda, we have 7 items: approval of October 20th minutes, approval of November 2nd minutes, a Geechee Technical College Facilities rental agreement, agreement between Animal Shelter and Forte Payment Systems for an online customer payment portal, approve an amendment to the budgets for fiscal year 2020 by appropriating amounts in each fund for various activities, service delivery strategy amendments, and grant 2021 alcoholic beverage renewal license for packaged retail beer and wine sales to certain establishments with a current 2019 license. If you would like to vote on these collectively, we certainly can. If you would like to single out anything and put it under new business, we can certainly do that. And I just need to hear what your wishes are.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask Mr. Couch one question on number 5.
Do we need to move this into new business?
Sure.
You want it moved into new business?
Not necessarily, just have one question.
Okay.
I was just gonna ask him what were some of the amendment to the budgets for appropriate amounts for various activities. What are some of those activities? You just give an example or two. That's all I had in mind. I'm just curious.
Yes, I think these are just technical amendments to how we actually finished out the year. You know, when we set the budget, and help me, Andy, does this pertain primarily to the general fund?
Yes, and some of the special revenue funds as well, such as adding grants that we didn't know we were going to get, changing out capital budgets for what we actually spent.
It's really a cleanup to help proceed with the audit. So that's a primary reason that we're doing it. Like Christy said, there's things, a lot of things to the good, a couple of things to the bad, but we have to balance it all out for the purpose of finishing the audit.
I just wanted you to touch on it. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Chairman, I think we can make a motion that we accept the consent agenda collectively.
Second the motion.
Have a motion, a second. Any more discussion? All those in favor of the motion, show of hands. Unanimous approval. Thank you very much. Now we'll move into new business. We have one item. Bullock County Road Repairs Fiscal Year 20 change order for Ellis Wood Contracting.
Brad Deal, County Engineer. This project was a project where we're doing to get better road patching on different roads. This isn't resurfacing. This is basically just some big areas that are damaged that we're going in and patching. And when we bid out the original project, we had a list of locations and roads that we were going to repair. And since after we bid the project out and started that project, we had a lot of other areas that have popped up in the meantime. And so we put together a list of those areas, and that's what's included in this change order. Some of the roads in the change order were in the original project, but it's just different sections of the road that weren't in the original project because the roads have either gotten worse or it has some other places that have popped up. The majority of the change order though is some new roads that weren't in the original list, and the largest one was a mud road between Highway 119 and Highway 80. And the damages that we've had on that road just happen to coincide with the detour that DOT had in place on Highway 80. So we think there might have been some additional traffic going down Mud Road, while that detour was in place. And, from what I understand, there was also a good bit of, log trucks coming through there for whatever reason, so. And I can, let's see, I can go through, well, we have a pretty long list, I could go through some of them, but, one of the, locations we've actually already repaired because we deemed it a safety issue, and that's, Burke Halter Road, near Old Register Road where the bridge is, just on a sharp curve, and due to the potholes and the ruts in the road, we felt like, it was a bit of a safety issue, where somebody could lose control as they come up on the bridge, and so we went ahead and actually made that repair. All the other areas we haven't done anything with at this point. The resurfacing project that we have in progress right now came in under budget, so we had some additional funds left over from that. And it's my understanding from talking to finance department that we feel like we have enough excess T-SPLOST funds to cover the change order. A few of the other places are, let's see, we had Harris Road. I think that's the one that Commissioner Simmons has been getting a lot of complaints on, and that's one due to some damage from tree roots. Most of the other ones are just areas that have potholes that Public Works has gone and patched and put coal patch in, but they have to keep going back out and repatching these roads. So what this is going to do is we're just going to put hot mix asphalt in there and a more permanent repair. And one of the locations is actually West Side Road, where we have a culvert that has to be replaced and the road is sinking in, and so this is going to repatch the road after Public Works replaces the culvert. And let me know if anyone has any questions on any of them.
Any questions, comments? And I can attest to one thing, on Old River Road, they went out and patched a pothole. It was probably about 2 feet in diameter, and after about the 13th time that they patched it, it kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. They had to cut out about a 279-foot strip to be able to get back to the solid pavement so they could fix it. And that's what all of this is about here, is you can only fix potholes so many times, and sometimes they'll come back the very next day. Is there any more questions or comments? If not, then I'm going to ask a motion or seek a motion for the new business item.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the change order in the amount of $250,000 with contracting.
We have a motion, we have a second. Any more discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, show of hands. Unanimous approval. Thank you very much. We're going to move into our next item, and we will have a report, October 2020 summary of revenues and expenditures. And Andy, I believe you are ready to give that report.
Yes, and we provide this each month, and we're in good shape right now. If you have any questions, let me know. But on the revenue side, we're in good shape. As you know, we received the hospital check, which was more than expected. The insurance premium tax check for this year was larger, and then we're in tax season right now, so we're seeing the taxes starting to come in. And so I think on the revenue side, we're in good shape. If you look at the expenditures, I'll get back here. We're also in good shape on the general fund side. There are a few that we do pay out early throughout the whole year, so you'll see a few of the departments are over, but that's just because we paid some outside agencies their entire amount up front. The special revenue funds, most of those are in really good shape right now. You can also see later in the report some of the departments that are over their budget right now. Some of those are one-time expenditures, and others are just the, as I mentioned before, the paying out throughout the year. So we're in good shape on the overall on the departments. And the overtime, the primary reason we have the departments are over their overtime budget, which sounds kind of funny, but it's primarily related to elections with all of the extra work they've had to do, And then other departments that are having to deal with the effects of COVID, probate court, facilities, and then roads trying to get caught up as well. So we're in good shape. Overall, and compared to other years, we're in much better shape this year, I think, on our overtime budget. Then finally, you can look at some of the other comparisons through some of the other years, but if you're curious about some of the capital projects that we have ongoing, if you look at the last page of that report, we're trying to get this updated every single month so that you can see the status of some of the larger capital projects. These aren't all of them. These are some of the larger ones. And so if you have questions about where we are and on some of these larger items, you can look here, and we update this every month. We get together as part of the capital projects meeting with Cindy. She updates this, and so we'll keep you up to date on the larger projects throughout the year. And if there's anything else that you would like us to add to this report, we can. We want to keep fine-tuning this and giving you higher level information. You don't need the line item detail information, but we wanted to be able to provide you a snapshot of where we are right now. Considering COVID and everything, we're in much better shape, I guess, than we expected when we put the budget together. We just had a meeting as well with our health insurance. We were a little concerned this year that our health insurance plan would have taken a little bit bigger hit. It didn't, which was really quite shocking. And so we're in much better shape in our health plan as well this year. And so we were afraid in a few years or a year or two we'd have to raise the premiums. Well, ending up this last year was much better than expected, and so we're in good shape. We're really pleased with that. So.
And I'd like to add one more thing, and it sort of pertains to Mr. Gibson's inquiry about the technical budget amendments earlier. And I'll ask Andy or Christie to correct me if I'm wrong in my assumption. But you'll remember the CARES Act money that we received, which was in excess of $2 million, I guess, $2.3 million, give or take. I think in the course of doing this technical amendment, it's likely to show the general fund finishing at a deficit in the last fiscal year. Is that correct? However, and the reason for that is I believe after discussion with the auditor, we thought we were supposed to book it for last year, but I think the guidance is we need to book the CARES money for this year. So with the strength of revenue development, and if we can continue to contain our overall costs in the general fund, what I think is likely to happen is that hopefully, there's no wood anywhere, but knock on wood, that should drive what we hope will be a surplus for this year. But the overreaching point is that despite a general fund deficit last year, we have sufficient fund balance, money in the bank, and the strength of the last few years has been fortunate for us. So we're very solid, we're able to sustain it, but we hope by the end of this fiscal year everything will wash out to the good.
Okay, do we have any questions? And what I'm hearing is we have the means to meet our needs at present time. If Tom, if it makes you feel better, you can tap on your wood nameplate there. Hey, it makes me feel better.
We both kind of lame.
Solid wood. But thank you all for that report. And it has been tough times, but hopefully we can weather this storm and get back to normal, whatever normal means. We're going to move next to do we have any comments from the staff? Any comments from the commissioners?
I'd like to salute the finance people, their whole group on this award they received. There's a lot of dedication and effort that's going into this, and it makes the manager and assistant manager and finance department, as well as commissioner in the whole county, makes everybody look good, I think. And it's I hear comments from time to time, people that actually do congratulate us on some of the things we do, so the work that these people do makes us all look good, I think.
And I'm sure they appreciate those comments, and anyone else?
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to say personally, thank you to Tom, yourself, and all others that was involved in the development authority meeting. Hopefully we'll see more of that to come. Especially thank Tom for taking the initiative. He was making a point, and I concur that it is something that we need to be very mindful going forward. And I just want to say thank you for that.
And we're going to have additional meetings like that very soon. And I appreciate all of y'all attending. Anyone else? You know, I would like to add something that y'all don't see that I do is the behind the scenes work. You know, I still will say this, we have the best employees anywhere that works for the county. I'll put them up beside anyone, and that was a fantastic award. People don't really realize what that finance award was. But I know they took pride. I was sitting in my office, and gosh, this has been a little while ago, and I heard some laughter and shouting and more laughter and more shouting, and walked down there, and that's when Whitney was here, Christy was in her room, and everybody was having a great time because of that award. That is a special award to get. And but it's not only the finance company, it's, you know, if y'all go around and just look, like the Ag Arena, went out there last 2 weekends ago, and just to hear the comments that people are making about that and the participation out there. But it's everybody that's working behind the scenes. I mean, from EMS to the animal shelter to every department that we have is doing a super job under the circumstances that we are under. So let's see if I missed anybody in here. Fire department, capital projects that we have going. So I appreciate everybody's effort. And so having said that, we're going to need to go into an executive session. And there's been several things added since late yesterday afternoon. And I hate to ask this, but the executive session is for litigation. All right, if y'all will bear with me, I need to read this statement. Let's see. According to 10-14, 4310 and 405260, I need to ask for a motion to go into executive session according to the county attorney, Mr. Jeff Akins, for the pending litigation. And I need a motion that we can go into executive session.
So moved. Second.
Motion, second. All those in favor, show of hands.